Hello, welcome to an all new episode of the In Between podcast. I am super pumped. I've been teasing her a little bit the past few weeks. I've also been just teasing the conversation in general with my mommies, my fellow moms. But I'm so pumped to have my cousin. Well, technically, I guess she's my cousin in law, but I also call my cousins my siblings. So it's all just a little kosher, if you know what I mean. But my cousin in law, whatever you want to call her, Jenna is here. I've been begging her to come on the pod. And actually, we were texting several weeks ago about just your sense of self and identity and then combating that with being a mom, which I think that's a beautiful conversation because I know I have lots of fellow moms that listen. And one day I will walk that path, not right now, but one day. So I was like, Jen, I just called you Jen. Okay, I don't know where that came from. Hey, Jen.
That's me.
It was Jen with two N's if it counts in my head.
Yeah.
I said, hey, Jenna, like, come on the pod and let's talk about this. So, welcome to the In Between.
Thank you so much for having me. I am pumped to be here and to be having this conversation with you and to everybody that's listening.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, just to give a little background, Jenna works in the school system, kind of a unique, I don't know, would you call it a private school? But it's a very interesting model, but it's small, very niche, very niche. But the only reason why I say all that is the role that you have there as a director over, is it like student affairs, is like it requires you to be very empathetic. And I'm just interested to have this conversation today with that at the forefront as well, because you got to do a lot as a mom and you got to do a lot at the job that you are in 8, 10 hours a day. You got to be empathetic with your spouse, who's my cousin, who I love dearly, and you got to be empathetic with yourself. And that's a lot of empathy, and empathy is like a lot. So I'm just kind of stressing that a little bit. But anywho, Jen and I, last week we went to a disco. I thought I would kind of share a little bit of Jenna's like a concert junkie. Actually, I don't know why I'm saying all this. Jenna, give the pod, tell them a little bit about you, other than the fact that you're a mom, because like obviously you're so much more than that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I know the conversation that we're going to be having today is obviously about like your identity, right? And so I thought I'd give it like a little bit of background on like how I kind of got to this point. So, I got pregnant when I was 23. So
Mm.
23 years old with my daughter. Was not expected, was not planned, and then had her when I was 24. Breastfed her. I'm sorry to everybody, but I breastfed. So either you're
Hey.
offended or you're not, who cares? Breastfed her for 13 months. Had one period and then got pregnant again.
Oh wow.
And so then was pregnant again for another, what is it, 10 months? Breastfed him for another year. So there was about 4 years consistently of my life where my body did not belong to me, which
Hmm.
was a lot to do back to back like that. And I know some people will be like, well, you're the one who got pregnant back to back. Yeah, for sure. I will take some ownership in that fact. However, nobody can imagine what that feels like. I mean, I'm the youngest of four kids. My mom had them about a year apart too. And so like I just was thought it was like a normal thing. And then I had two back to back and I was like, oh my God, how did she have two more? And so I really didn't have those formative years to really like focus on myself and who I was as I was becoming an adult. Because when you're 23, you're not really an adult.
Right.
Um,
Nope. By
I know.
society, technically you're an adult, but like you're not. No, not quite.
At all. And so, really, the conversation we're going to be having today, Elizabeth, it did not even register in my head until about this time last year. So, I mean, I was almost 28 at that point. And so, like, it's just kind of crazy how the time has flown and just how all of a sudden I woke up and I entered that mindset of like, oh my God, what am I doing? Like, I am creeping up there. I know I'm not old by any means, but like, I've got to start to focus on myself because when else am I going to do it, you know?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how all of this began. But let's circle it back to our concert stuff. So it's last spring break. So I use spring break as a term because I know a lot of people are like, we're adults. Spring break isn't a thing. Obviously, as Elizabeth said, I work in a school. So I am fortunate to get a spring break. And so last spring break, I was like, okay, I am taking this week for myself. My kids get to go to daycare. I am going to use every opportunity just to give myself some self love. And I had come across this dance party at the Masquerade called Electric Feels, and it's indie electronic pop music. And I was like, oh my
Mm.
God, my aesthetic. I was like, Evan, we have to go. We have to go. And so it was just him and I that went, and it was a $15 like little show, whatever. And it changed my absolute life. I felt my soul leave my body. Like, I don't know, like I just had felt something come out in myself that I was like, where has this been? Oh my gosh. And I was dancing and I was dancing with my husband, and it was such an amazing moment. And that is where the concerts were born. Um,
Ah.
And so between spring break last year and now, I've probably been to at least, I would say, 25 concerts.
Yes, for sure. It's like every other weekend, every 2 weeks or so, you're always doing something, but you do a lot of these little dance parties as well. And that's what you dragged me to last week. And I say drag with lots of love. Like she didn't really drag me. Like any way for me to dress up like a hippie, I will take advantage of that 1000%. But it was honestly so much fun. Surprisingly, like I knew I was gonna have fun, but oh my God, talk about your soul leaving your body. And we were sober for the most part. It was just like dancing and just, I don't know, the vibe was great. It was wonderful. But I remember it was beginning of the year, you're gonna make an oath, or not oath, gosh, that's kind of dramatic, but like you made an oath with yourself. You were gonna go to a concert every month, right? Was that a New Year's resolution?
Yeah, kinda. I mean, last year, because it was so new, it really wasn't consistent. I would just kind of do them when I could. And so then coming into the new year, I was like, okay, I want to do one of these a month because, again, as a mom and as somebody who works, right? Like I don't get a whole lot of time for myself. I make a joke. I literally get 14 minutes a day. 7 minutes from daycare to work and 7 minutes from work to daycare. So that's the
Mm,
14 minutes that I get by myself in an entire day. Um,
that's a lot. Wow. Don't go too wild.
and I was just like, you know what? Like, I am going to make a commitment to once a month going and listening to live music, even if it's somewhere local, like in downtown Woodstock or something, right? Like just something. And so I have done very well at that goal. As you know, last weekend we went to the disco. I also went to Taylor Swift and I saw another concert on Monday night. So I really outdid my quota last weekend. But again, I can't tell you, like on Tuesday, I was in such a good headspace. And I came to work, and we always start off our huddles in the morning and we start with celebrations. And my celebration was like, I feel so alive after 3 days of live music and just experiencing that with people. And I was like, am I physically dead? Yes. But I was like, my endorphins, like everything was so cloud nine for at least 2 or 3 days after that. And so just how important it is for my mental health. And I know some people won't
Yep.
relate to me when I talk about it. Some people are going to be like, oh my God, concerts give me anxiety. Totally
Everyone
valid.
has their thing. Everyone
Totally
has their
valid.
thing. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But just figuring out that concerts are my thing and it might not be my thing forever, but it is my thing right now. And I have never been able to identify something like that that brings me as much joy or just sense of self. Like I get out there and I'm like, I'm Jenna. I'm not just a mom. I'm not just a wife. I'm not just an employee. Like I'm out here doing my own thing. And, I go to some with my husband, with Evan, and I go to some with my friends. And I've even said, like, I'll go to one by myself at some point just to kind of experience that. But it has been honestly a lifesaver. And so I'm doing well this year and I can't wait to keep it going.
I guess another reason I bring this up is that it's such a huge part of your identity and it's a source of your happiness. And everyone's got their thing. Like I am obviously podcasting because I'm a crazy whatever. But I'm curious, you said you had this thought last year for spring break, but when did you start getting more serious about focusing on Jenna and just taking into more account Jenna and Jenna's needs?
Yeah.
Because I know this plays into it as well, because like this is a priority. And I think it's really beautiful that you've stayed committed to that because it is good for your mental health. And I think it's important to recognize giving yourself at least once a month something that brings you the utmost joy. Are we not allowed that? Are we not allowed to have just one fleeting moment of absolute happiness?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So you've prioritized that. And I think that's really important. So I just want to talk around that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think before I go into the other part where you just said is like, having the utmost happiness, but also I want to stress that that doesn't always have to be with your kids because I know that there are some people out there that's like, yeah, like you can do that with your kids. And I'm like, I love my children more than you could ever freaking imagine. I would go to the moon and the stars for those little people. But again, like it is okay to not want to be with them 100% of the time. Like you talked about at the beginning, empathy, right? So kind of circling back to the journey, I was pregnant with Oliver, my second child, your sweet little nephew.
Love him. Elmer
In
Fudd. I call him
Elmer
Elmer
Fudd.
Fudd. He's a little old man. I don't know how to
He
explain it.
is. He
He
is.
is such a little old man.
But our little old man was a COVID baby.
Right.
And, I don't expect people to get it, but being pregnant in COVID was absolute terror. So, like, COVID happened in March of 2020, and I had him in July. So, it's not
Yeah.
like I was a couple months pregnant. Like, girl was almost due. Like, girl was about to pop out this baby. And
Mm,
so, I was going through all the guilt of not giving enough attention to Eleanor because she was only 2 at that point.
right.
I was going through the fear of what it was going to be like to give birth in a hospital during a freaking pandemic when I will
Jeez.
I will not get into it, but like I was forced to have a natural birth with him because because of the testing protocols, because in July, rapid tests didn't even begin, might I add you. So only the 2 hour long, like, COVID tests were real. And so it was basically like you either got tested or you didn't. And if you refused to be tested, then they would put you in the wing where basically they would assume that you had COVID and treat you
Oh,
like you had
wow.
COVID. And so, like, yeah, the delivery with him was traumatic, but we
Mm,
made it. It was all good, right? Like, he's here, he's healthy. But then again, right after that, again, I was still home. Like, I was home for another three months.
yeah,
He couldn't go to daycare because, again, they were shutting down all the time
right.
because of cases and things. And so, like, emotionally, I went through a lot. And then I immediately started this job in October of that year. And so I love where I work. Shameless plug for my awesome private school that I work at. But it takes a lot of empathy. And so I literally went from being this exhausted mom who just went through COVID with two kids and giving birth into an environment where I was then supporting other kids who had gone through traumatic experiences in school through COVID, because that's something else that doesn't get talked about a whole lot is like what those kids went through for those 2 years, the isolation that they felt. I mean, the
Oh,
anxiety, the
exactly.
depression, like, and so like I dove right into that. And I was grateful to be able to go to an in-person school for sure. But I'm going on almost 3 years of being there. And there are successes and wins and really happy days. And then there are really freaking sad days and I cry and I'm like, how do I protect my kids from this stuff? And so emotionally, yes, I am in a pretty intense job, but I love it
Absolutely.
and it's very rewarding. But I think this time last year, again, I had probably been there for what, I don't know, math, like a year and a half at that point, maybe math, meh. Um,
We're done with
but
that. We are done with that,
no
girlfriend.
more math. We're just a little bit halfway. And so, like, I know this is very cheesy, but I'm going to say it. I started to
I
have a
love cheese. I love
conversation.
cheese, so don't even
I
worry about it.
I started to have a conversation with myself about cups in my life. Okay. So hang on with me.
Okay.
So Evan and I would have conversations, and I would be like, I have so many cups and I can't keep any of them remotely full at this point in my life. I was like, I have this cup, being a mom, being a wife, being a good worker, trying to maintain physical health, right? Like just all the cups that we're trying to fill. And I had so many freaking cups. And I was like, I'm struggling with all of them. And I didn't have a cup for myself. The cup for myself was non existent. The cup was out of the room, downstairs, just was not real. And I was like, I have to minimize my cups and I have to create a cup for myself because if I'm not filling myself, how can I fill the rest of this? Again, I know that's super cheesy, but
Mm-mm, not at all.
that's really where it started. As I just started to have this realization that I was giving so much of myself to everybody else, which is so easy to do, right? Like it totally is. And it's what I want to do sometimes, but also it's important to draw healthy boundaries sometimes and protect yourself. It's so easy for me to be like, yeah, I'll stay in clothes, right? Or I'll stay and handle this situation. But sometimes, especially now, I have to hold boundaries for myself and be like, you know what? I have kids at home that need me. I have a husband at home that needs me, right? I'm having
Right.
those conversations. But then again, going back to the topic that we're talking about today is like, I had to make time for myself, even
Mhm.
when I continuously told myself that there was no time for it.
Makes sense. Absolutely. I don't think the cups metaphor is silly at all. I actually think it's beautiful because I don't know, with me, my anxiety, and I know you struggle with anxiety as well. I know your husband does as well. I know mental health is something that we all struggle with, and it's something that I talk about very much on the pod. And I feel like when you can visualize emotionally speaking, like in that kind of capacity, it helps you break down what is lacking, what is taking me away. I don't know. I think it's really beautiful. So I actually appreciate you sharing that example because somebody could be listening to that and be like, that's a great way to piece apart why I feel so overwhelmed. Because when you feel like the waves crashing, and I can only imagine how motherhood probably feels like a waves crashing all the time, it's better to keep them all separated. So I think that is really nice. So good for you for prioritizing and focusing on that. So and I know the position you have now because you've been promoted somewhat recently, right within the past year, but it's more of a high profile position. So let's talk about focusing on yourself, taking the cup for Jenna, focusing on the career, like focusing on the career advancement, juggling aging babies, like babies to toddlers, and then that has new needs, you know what I mean? And like learning curves and challenges and also all the things with that. So if you want to kind of just like talk about that too, we can talk into that transition as well.
Yeah, I mean, when you just said it out loud, I'm like, "Oh my god, all the things." That's sometimes I think I keep myself in such like a tunnel vision type mentality because if I broaden it too much and I see it all, it scares the shit out of me and I go
Yeah,
like, like and so
totally get that.
and I want to say too, for anybody that's listening that isn't a mom, like this also applies if you're in a relationship, like if it's you and just a significant other, or if it's just you by yourself, I feel like this can apply regardless of your status, whether you have children, are married, are single. Make sure you have a cup of your own. That's
Hmm.
what that is like my number one
Love
advice.
that.
Like I said, because we all know those people who get relationships and then become completely codependent, right, on the other people. And
Yes.
like Elizabeth, this is something that like I really look up to you and stand about because ever since
Aw.
like I've known you guys, I don't know, it's like I love that you guys do your thing. Like the times that you're together, you'll be like, yeah, stand off like on like a fishing trip. And I'm like, I love that for him. His fishing trips or hunting trips or whatever are like my concerts, right? Like that is
Right.
his thing. And then you are just this go-getter kind of woman and you go out and just do all these things. So like I have honestly modeled that from you guys since day one. Like that
Aw, thank
to
you.
me is what a healthy relationship should look like, right? Like
Yes.
being able to step away. And so, like I was just saying, like this can apply even if you don't have children. But then it gets even more difficult whenever you do have children because then you have
Right.
more stakeholders in this conversation. I'm going to use a nice business term because I'm a business lady.
Very
Um,
codependent stakeholders. Very codependent stakeholders.
Yeah. And so it's really just like I have had to start checking in with myself like more times a day. And Evan works from home. And so it's so funny. We have completely opposite situations here. So like I work in a school with over 100 kids, over 30 teachers, and everybody needs me for something all day, every day. And so then I come home and I'm like, I'm touched out. Like nobody asked me a freaking question. And then he hasn't seen people all day because he works from home. And he's like, oh my God,
Oh,
hey, there's a person here. And so we really had to check in with ourselves, like in the relationship, and just be like, okay, what do you need from me today? Where's your headspace at? Right. Things like that. And then I've also been trying to be more mindful about talking to him throughout the day. And like when I talk to him, I am off my laptop, it's closed. I'm trying to like really focus. And so honestly, just mindfulness, I guess, is what
yeah.
I'm trying to say. Just like being more mindful, taking those pauses to be like, wait, am I giving the energy that I need to be giving right now towards what I want to be giving energy to? I used to check my emails on the weekend and stuff like that. I mean, again, everybody needs me all the time. All the time. Like I I don't get it. It's great, but it's a lot. And so I was really bad at like bringing my computer home, checking my emails on the weekends, and I was like, no, I'm not doing
Yeah.
this
You need
anymore.
some
Like
work-life balance.
yeah. And so, like, work life balance, checking with yourself, just being more mindful of where you are in the moment and who you really want to be giving that energy to. And again, let's tie it in. Sometimes that energy is yourself. Like, sometimes I do come home and I'm like, I need 15 minutes. The kids screamed the whole 30 minutes home because I didn't get them Dunkin' Donuts. Yes, guys, that is actually my life. There's a Dunkin' across the street from daycare. Who did that to me? It was just built within the last 6 months. So every day it's like, can we get a donut? I'm like, no. And then it screams.
That's awful. That's really naughty. Who did that is very messed up for sure. Oh my
So, like,
goodness.
sometimes I literally go from an extremely overstimulated day. I have a student that has a meltdown, or I have to have a hard conversation with a parent. And, like, again, I'm drained. And then I go and I pick up my children who then also are tired and drained from their day and, like, have meltdowns themselves. And so, like, I'll come home and again, just communicate, okay, I need like 15 minutes to myself. Like, I'm going to go lock myself in the bathroom for a minute,
Hmm.
like maybe scroll TikTok for a second, just like some brainless stimulation.
Yeah.
And then I come out and like I'm reset. So again, trying not to push yourselves through those frustrations and just like communicating with your partner, whoever your village is, right? Like, hey, I just need a minute. Like I
Right.
need to reshift my mindset and just kind of take a breather. And that's also why I think the once a month concert thing was kind of important because I'm like, it's a nice reset for me every single month, whether it's
Yes.
it's the beginning, the end, the middle, 3 in a weekend, like a crazy person. But like I know that that's going to come and then I'm going to have that release. And like you said, I don't even have to
Absolutely.
be like messed up, like
Yeah.
it's like I'm probably the most sober person in the building,
We were sober as can be, and I was sweating bullets from all the discoing I was doing. Like it was a great time. 10 out of 10 would do again,
Yeah.
1000%. So yeah. And I totally get that. Like you said, beginning, end, whatever, you look forward to it. Like I think it's genius. And I love how you also alluded to not just people without kids, not just people with kids, excuse me, but just find that one thing that brings you joy. It could be like going all out and cooking a freaking 5 course dish. I would love to be an ambitious cook, but then I think about all the prep that's involved and I'm like, absolutely not. Like, I am not that chick. Maybe that's your one thing that you want to do, but I appreciate you saying that because I think that's relatable to anybody. But this is talking about mommies and motherhood. And like you mentioned it, when you bring kids into the fold, and not that you ever stop teaching children. I mean, I feel like my mother still teaches me as an adult woman, but at the ages that they are, especially Eleanor, like she's about to start kindergarten, and the emotional maturity that you're going to have to really start implementing and teaching. And like, that's a lot from everything that you've said now. How do you fill the Jenna cup? You've recognized the Jenna cup and focusing on your career and spending time with your husband, your kids. Like sometimes like that filters into the Jenna cup 1000%. I think that's worth recognizing. We're not saying that those things aren't part of what brings you happiness, but you can't ignore what you personally need, right? I mean, I don't have kids and sometimes I need my dog and my husband leave me alone. And I'm like, am I ridiculous? And I'm like, no, I'm not. So I can't even imagine two small babies, like small children. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Okay, yeah. I mean, at this age, with them being as young as they are, I mean, there's a limit to what I can put in the Jenna cup, right? Like, I can't go too cuckoo crazy, right? Because I have little kids. Now, what Jenna's cup looks like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, is probably going to
Absolutely.
be entirely different. And so,
1000%. 1000%.
yeah, just because you've got, babysitters who's going to babysit my 5-year-old and my 3-year-old, right? Like, shout out to my mother-in-law who really comes in clutch a lot of the times. It's about having that village. And then, like I said, sometimes it is a conversation of like, okay, Evan, yeah, I really want to go with you tonight and I want to experience this with you. However, can I take a friend and maybe you hold on to me for one night, right? And you take care of the kids for one night. And so, it's all about finding that balance. But the concerts are my main fill in my cup for sure, filled along with those little things that we were kind of talking about. Like, again, my 7-minute drives, I am big about those now. I never paid attention to them until I started to have this
Mm,
conversation with myself. I really started to break down those moments in my day. Like, how do I do things for myself in my average day? In my average work day, where I wake up at 5:30, I leave the house at 8 a.m., I get the kids to school, I'm not at work till 9 o'clock, and then I'm typically there until 5:30. And then I get the kids, get home about 6:30, eat dinner, do bath, then I'm tired and it's time for bed. So, like, how do I take that routine that is so chaotic? Because
yeah.
it's just the way my life is right now. And how do I add those things in there? So, my 7-minute drives, these are like sacred to me. My car rides are sacred. So, like, Evan even knows I won't call him when I leave work because he knows that's my 7 minutes. Like, I'll
Yes.
call him after I get the kids. I'll text you, be like, hey, I'm on the way home, but these are my 7 minutes. Sometimes it's me blasting my music as loud as I possibly can. I'm definitely on a TikTok somewhere at a red light, like for sure. Like, if
I
there's
love that.
no way that a clip does not exist of me on the internet because I go ham. Okay. Like, I don't
I
even
love
care.
that. I
There are
love that.
cars all around me and I just lose my shit. And I don't know why. It just gets my blood pumping, right? Just all this stuff. And then sometimes my 7 minutes after work is like dead silence and the window's down. And I'm just
Yes.
like, I need keys.
Decompressing.
Yeah. Like, I'm
Yes.
like, I just need
1000%.
keys. So, like, I've really started to pay very close attention to those fine details of myself. And when I tell you, I feel just like such a different person. If you would have told me that I'd be having this conversation with you before this time last year, I'd be like, yeah, right. I just feel like I was struggling for so long that just trying to catch all the balls and again survive a freaking pandemic with toddlers, it just did not occur to me. And so I don't have it all figured out yet, that's for sure.
That's the beauty though.
But I have these conversations with everybody, and I have to share with you that I've had two instances within the last month that I've been like, oh my God. One girl I went to college with, we're not close, but we're friends on Facebook. But I saw her post and be like, I want to go out with my friends. I'm not just a mom. Like, I want to do things and have my own identity. I have no idea who I am. And I was like, oh my God, girl, like, let's talk about it. Like, this is something I'm real passionate about right now. And so I even told her I was going to speak on the podcast about it. So I'm going to make sure to send her the episode. But it's a problem. And I think you've talked about this a lot in a lot of your episodes is like that nobody talks about, right? Sometimes you just don't know. And then the second experience that I'll share with you is I had another friend who works in the office building like next to me, but I never get to see her because she's virtual for most of the time. And I went and sat and talked with her one day when she was in the office. And she was like, me and my husband are thinking about having kids. And I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. I'm so excited for you. And she's
Yeah.
like, but he's really on the fence because he doesn't want to lose the freedom that we have. Like, how's our lifestyle going to change and stuff? And she was like, Jenna, I show him your Instagram stories. And I'm like, look, Jenna goes and has fun, does all these things. And I was like, Oh my God. Like it almost made me like cry because we're going to talk about intrusive thoughts for a second, right?
Yes. I
You
was going
know,
to say, I was waiting for that.
it may seem really easy for me to do these things. It may seem to others that I can just leave my children no problem and go in and have these experiences, but that is definitely not the case. Sometimes I literally will walk out the door, go get in the car and cry for a minute because I feel so guilty. And I'm like, I shouldn't be doing this for myself. I should be inside. I should be doing all of these things. And so to hear that from her, like made my heart literally melt inside my
Good.
body because I was like, I think people look at my Instagram stories and are like, why is this chick not at home? Right. Like, for real, I think people think that about me. And so to hear her say that you're an example of how we can be parents and still be ourselves, like just
Absolutely.
all that I would ever
Well,
want.
society doesn't really paint that picture,
Mm-mm,
you know, especially as a woman. It'd
mm-mm.
probably be different if it was a man, but even still, it's just the society doesn't paint that picture for sure. And I mean, Evan gets to go do some things. He gets to do things for himself. Like, I think it's important to recognize that. And I think it's good to recognize that at such a young age, too. And yes, I know you guys were young when you had your babies, but you're still young people and you still get to experience life. And there's going to be moments as they get older where like the life and them intermingle too. And like there's life with them, but there's life for y'all as well. So that's really important. And I
Yeah.
think it is special that you can kind of be an example to like what that looks like. Hey, I can still have my night where I get to just be myself and let my freak flag fly, even if it's just a sober disco party. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, and I think that's great.
Yeah, yeah. And think about our moms, Elizabeth. Like, my mom has said things to me a couple times. So when she was 24, she had 4 kids. So let's brainstorm that for a second. And so like she's made comments, you're so lucky. She was like, I love your social life and how much you get out and go do things. And I don't think that that was an opportunity. Obviously, again, one for a woman who had 4 kids and was a single mom, she couldn't afford sitters and things like that, right? But even let's say that wasn't the situation, like just the older generations, I don't think
No,
that was just like that wasn't okay. Like
no, not at
you
all.
should be home with your children. That is the bottom line. And so it feels very rebellious of me,
I was gonna say
like
that's probably where the judgment, like
yeah.
judgment that you put on yourself
Yeah.
comes from.
But to hear my mom, this was just a couple months ago, just be like, you're doing it. Like, you're doing really good. I love that you're getting this time for yourself. Like, made me realize that, like, she probably wanted this too. 'Cause she probably worked all the time, had no time for herself, right? And I can't imagine how like suffocating that would feel. And I felt it for a while for sure. But then again, I kind of had the realization and was like, it doesn't have to be this way. And I am so grateful to have a supportive husband. Shameless plug, Evan is the best.
Love that
But
kid.
but love that kid. But also, a village. I have
Yeah.
amazing friends, an amazing family, and everybody jumps in whenever we need them. And so I love that we have fostered that environment for ourselves where we are around people who support us for doing this stuff as well. And Evan's on it, he loves concerts too, like don't get me wrong, but like he also is trying to find those things that fills his cup.
Yeah.
And so it's such a balance, and I'm so grateful to have people that allow me to do these things, or at least not
Aw.
allow. I mean, I say allow, but like encourage and
Yeah,
support
absolutely.
and just like make me feel like nothing that you're doing is wrong, Jenna. Like nothing you're
Yeah.
doing is wrong. And so it's just so good.
That's 1000% so good. And, you know, you mentioned Evan is trying to find his thing and like it's not fun feeling lost. I can't imagine it feeling fun feeling lost when you have kids, when you're supposed to be this role model and not just with the pressure of society, but the pressure you probably put on yourself, which does probably come from society, but you know what I mean. So I think it's very important, you know, very, very important. And you mentioned like our moms and like my mom was a single mom and she devoted her life to me. And like I'm kind of shortchanging this a little bit and hopefully it doesn't come off negative. I love my mom. My mom is freaking amazing, one of my best friends, of course. But she's even made comments to me like the way you prioritize your social life and just putting yourself out there and living, existing. She's like, I love that for you because I didn't get that. I didn't do that. So I think it's good to acknowledge that focusing on you is also in a weird way putting yourself out there. And maybe we can disband that. Like doing things for you is not putting yourself out there. It's just doing things for you. You know what I mean? But let's put that message out there. Focus on yourself, prioritize yourself, and don't feel lost. It's really important.
That,
And
and it is so hard. Like I think there are so many things out there that can be your thing.
Hmm.
right? Like there's so many things like to just think about, right? Like you could be like into ping pong, like, you could be into rock climbing, you could be into swimming, reading books, going and sitting in those cute eclectic coffee shops, right? Like whatever that
Right.
looks like for you. And so I think it's also scary because there's so many things to try. And so, like I said, I had decided to kind of go to that concert that one night and felt like this spark ignite inside of me where I was like, this is it. This is what brings me joy. This is what makes me feel like I am 18 again, like just like on top of the world, right? But in a much better version of myself. Like, I definitely don't want to go back to when I was 18, but more just like self assured. Like, I don't even stress about the outfits I wear, Elizabeth. It's just like,
Yep.
I'm just going to go and be and exist and know that everybody else in this room is just existing too. Like, I literally have that mentality of like, social anxiety, meh, right? Like, we all have it.
God, right?
Meh. But like going into a room and not focusing literally on anybody else around me, and
Yes.
just accepting the fact that like everybody's here for the same reason that I
Yep.
am, whether they have children, don't have children, right? Whatever. This is going to bring them joy. This is why they're here. They're here to dance. They're here to get sweaty. They're here to just like sing at the top of their lungs. It just feels so solid and so good. And so, like, my body is getting tired. I'm not going to lie. So, like, within like the next 3 years, right? I don't know what that's going to look like. If Concert Jenna can keep going, Disco Jenna can keep going. My knee's been cracking since the disco last week. But like what is that going to shift into then? Like what am I going to discover for myself? And so like I want to encourage myself and everybody who's listening right now to try those new things. Now, if you're like looking at and you're like, absolutely hell no, like skydiving, count me out, right? I'm not saying test your fears, but I'm just saying like just try. Like even if it's just a little thing. I'm also a big believer in like going and doing things by yourself every now and again. Now, obviously safety is a factor, so let's not like go out,
Yes.
like 2 a.m. by ourselves.
Yes.
But if there's like a day where I can go have breakfast by myself, like I will sit down in a restaurant and eat breakfast by myself.
That's
And
good though.
to some that might sound like, okay, that's weird, Jenna. Like, why are you sitting and eating breakfast by yourself? But like being alone, I think with yourself and your thoughts is the most like intimate thing that you can do for yourself.
1000%. I've actually
Um,
read lots of things about like how you should do that. Like you should go and do things by yourself for yourself. I've read things about how it helps your creativity, it like stimulates your brain. I totally encourage that as well. So
yeah.
great point. Great
Yeah.
point, girlfriend. Love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. I mean, it's so uncomfortable though. Like
Oh, for
it's
sure.
so uncomfortable. And so like I said, I know that, just lean into the discomfort of just like
Ooh, love that.
I'm gonna have this time for myself to listen to my thoughts and just try to feel what I'm feeling and people watch, like I just look around me and I'm just like, let me embrace the world that I'm in for a minute and just enjoy the silence, talk to new people. That's usually when like, everybody knows me. I'm gonna make a joke about myself for a second. I can walk up to a person and within the next like 5 minutes, I know like their astrological sign and how,
I'm the same
what
way.
what
I'm
year
the
they were
same way.
born. And
I told Stan, I was like, my superpower is making friends, isn't it? He goes, yeah, you just realized that? And I was like,
yeah.
it's like a blessing and a curse sometimes.
It is. It is. Yeah.
Uh,
Evan loves it whenever I get stuck talking to people. But
Same, Stan. Evan and Stan are very similar in that regard. It's like, okay, Liz, there you go again. And Stan has this look. He's just like, all right, this is
yeah.
continuing, and this
Yeah.
person's not worth the time. Let's
Yeah.
keep going.
Yeah.
Let's keep
Yeah.
going.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
sometimes when you're with groups of people, it's hard to make other connections, right? Because
Right.
you're in your little pod and you might be with people who aren't like that. And so, I think those opportunities when you are by yourself is an awesome way to do that. If it's as simple as like complimenting a woman's dress, or I don't even know, say I can't think of another example other than that right now. Um, that's it. That's the only way you make friends, complimenting a woman's dress. Um, just like pointing out something to somebody or just like, oh my God, I love that shirt. Again, I'm going with clothing, so just ignore me.
Love that lip color. There we go.
There we go. And it doesn't have to be just be females. But yeah, I don't know, just like putting yourself out there, talking with the waitress that's serving you at breakfast, right? Just like putting yourself out there for those connections because I think the relationship with yourself is super important, but the relationships that you form with other people, even when they're that short, even if you talk to that waitress or that person for 5 minutes and you never see them again in your life, everything has some sort of impact,
Oh,
And so
1000%.
you might hear a story that could change your perspective on something. And
Hmm.
so just lean into this discomfort, like we
I
said, and
love
just
that.
put yourself out there. Like, even if you're an introvert, because I know that's hard.
That's actually a mindset, a mantra, whatever you want to call it, that I really live my life by. It's kind of like I like to leave people better than I left them, whether that's listening to a story, whether that's sharing a compliment. So, you and I share that, Jenna, because I don't know, you do never know. You never know like what small moment can make an impact. So, I don't know, it's good to recognize that within yourself too.
Yeah.
So, and intrusive thoughts, that's something that, God, I think we all can identify with.
Mhm.
So, embracing those and recognizing them for what they are, which I know is easier said than done, a lot easier said than done. But making sure that that personal cup is filled,
Mhm.
however high level it needs to be, can help with that though. And I don't know, I keep thinking about the commitment you gave yourself for each month to go to the concert thing. And I just think about that on much more than the impact of what it is simply of just going to a concert, right? It is a starting is the hardest part. I think a lot of people can recognize that, right? And taking the time of committing, it's easier to say I'm going to do something than actually doing it. And you have done it enough now that you see the benefit, right? You see the reward, you see the improvement, right? So
Mhm.
I don't know, everybody listening. And honestly, I think this message is beautiful because it can relate to anybody. Like,
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
ignore your cup. And all the
Yeah.
mamas listening, that cup is pretty dry. So you
Yeah.
really need to nurture the cup.
Yeah. Yeah. Wash your face and pick something else for you to do for yourself, right? Like
Right.
those are my things.
Because children, that's a separate cup.
Yeah.
Partner, that's a separate cup. Job,
Yep.
that's a separate cup. You
Yep.
still deserve your own cup.
Yeah. Absolutely. Even if you don't put a ton in it, right? Like it just every little bit counts. And again, like the intrusive thoughts thing, there are times where, a concert got announced on Monday and it's for September. And I bought the tickets instantly as soon as they became available. And somebody's like, oh my God, like you bought those already? And I was like, yeah, because if I don't, I won't. Like I know I won't. And I will get up to the time of like it's time to get ready and go. And I'm like melting down in the bathroom and I'm like, I can't go. Like Eleanor's upset and like, da 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 da. Right. Like I can't. And like I almost talked myself out of it. And then I reset myself again and I'm like, okay, they are okay. They were the person who loves them and will keep them safe and they will eventually calm down and I will go. And then they're gonna be in bed for most of the time that I'm gone, right? But I also have to argue with myself in my head of just like the mom guilt. The mom guilt is so real.
Yeah,
And
I
it
can
is
only
so
imagine.
loud. It is so freaking loud because like you just feel like a bad mom for making a decision that does not involve, is not in the best interest of your child, right? And I think that's where the clarity comes from. It's like I'm not a bad mom because I'm leaving them with their grandmother for the night, right? Like if anything, I'm enriching their lives by giving them that opportunity to have that one-on-one time with her, right? But
Absolutely.
like again, just shifting your perspective, this is not a bad thing, but it is so incredibly hard. And I mean, it was even as a long time ago, not anymore, but like a long time ago, it'd be like, I need to go take a shower, but it's a bad time to take a shower. The kids are upset, right? Blah, 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 blah. Like I would
Mm.
go into the bathroom. Like some days, like I would like have to go to the bathroom and I would push it off because I was like, it's just not a good time to go and disappear right now. And like
Mm.
all the things, but like it's even the littlest things like that. And I want to say like it's not my partner. Like Evan is even like, why are you asking me if you can go take a shower? Like go take a shower, like but
Yeah.
you can't help but just be like, I can't walk away. I need to make sure that everything's okay, especially when they were newborns. My God,
Ooh.
breastfeeding, right, and all the things. I'm like, my boobs are needed. I gotta go. Like I need my boobs. But just it was so bad right after the kids were born, and then it took me honestly until last year to shut it out a little bit and
Mm.
just be like, you know what, you're being rude right now. I am a great mom, and I know I'm a great mom, and my kids are so loved and so cared for, and I am super grateful to have a partner that's on the same page with me in terms of just like how we want to raise our children and how we want to be vulnerable about how we're feeling. I tell Eleanor and Oliver when I'm stressed out. Oliver doesn't get it as much right now, of course, but Eleanor does. And she'll be like, why are you upset? Like, take a deep breath. Like, I feel like we've taught her some of those skills that it's okay to not. I think our parents, again, traditionally had to present themselves as these superheroes. I don't think it was normal for you to show that you have emotion or even tell your child, I'm sorry. Right.
Yeah.
And so, like, I feel like our generation is changing that. I think that we are.
1000%.
And like I
Yeah.
want to show her and I also am very honest with her. Like, hey, I'm going out tonight. I'm going to dance at a concert with my friends because it makes mommy really happy and it brings me a lot of joy. Of course, she's like, I want to go. And I'm like, in a couple years, baby girl, I will take you to your own concert. I will go dance with you at concerts. But I also just try to explain to her because I want her to grow up and feel the same way. I
Yeah.
want her to grow up and understand that it is okay to hold boundaries for yourself. It is okay to go and do things by yourself and tell people when you like or don't like things, or just like be authentically you. I just want that for her so bad. And so I hope that what I'm doing by doing this and how it'll transform over the next couple years in terms of what is filling my cup sets a great example for my kids.
I'm
And so
sure it will.
I really want that for them.
I'm sure it will. And I think that's a very fair point to make. Like, growing up, that is what we saw for the most part. I mean, just me and my mom being an only child, like it was a little bit more personal and she was a little bit less stringent, like not stringent, like she let me do whatever I wanted, but it was a little bit more just
Hmm.
I don't want to say this because I don't want people thinking like we were friends because I know that can be kind of a weird
Yeah.
relationship, but like we were, but it was still like she was my mother. I don't know. It was more intimate, I guess you could
Yeah.
say, if that makes any more sense. But even
Absolutely.
still, with my grandparents, and shout out to giving that quality time because I think it's very important. Like my mom being a single mom, I was kind of half raised by mine, so it's important. But we didn't see that. Like the parents kept it all together. I was going to say you barely see them fight, and that's so not the truth. I know some people did not get to grow up in happy households, but for the most part, generally speaking, like I don't know. If anything, you kept things quiet. You didn't talk
Yeah.
about the outdoors, or you kept your business very safe and kept the door
Mhm.
shut, all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
So it is important
Yeah.
to offer that insight. And I think that you and Evan do a good balance of that and raising empathetic humans while also juggling your same challenges of your own needs and things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah. And before we get to the end of the episode or anything like that, I'm just curious. I know you've kind of talked about it a little bit, but even more so, what started giving you these thoughts last year where you finally were like, "Hey, whoa, am I ignoring Jenna? Like, am I ignoring my needs? Oh my God, yeah." Because at the beginning of the episode, you mentioned your body kind of being this, not even just kind of, literally not being yours. It was
Literally.
theirs.
Yeah.
And that's just what you had to do as a mama, right? But
Mhm.
was it part of like Oliver getting to the age where maybe he wasn't as needed and dependent on your body, your milk,
Yes.
or okay.
Yes, yeah, it was about, I would say, a year after I stopped breastfeeding him. And so, like, I think it took some time for me to also like process through that and realize that I
Yeah.
wasn't needed anymore. But yes, when he got to more of an independent kind of stage and I could be away for longer time periods and things like that, I definitely think that's what did it. But again, I can literally picture that moment being at that concert with Evan over spring break and just the lights and the smile on my face that hurt my face. I had cramps in my cheeks by the end of the night because I was just like, happiness and joy. Like we were front row, like up against like the gate. Like that's not even who I am as a person. But like it was just such a life changing, like, oh my God, like I am standing here and I am breathing and I'm alive. And I like cried. I mean, I literally had tears in my eyes. Like it just realizing that I had that moment where I felt so myself, and I had not felt that in so long. And two, we are not the same people that we were.
Yeah.
Right? Like when you were I'm not the same person I was 5 years ago. I'm not the same person definitely I was 10 years ago. And so like I think another big part of this conversation is like checking in with yourself on how you've changed as a person. You have like those friends from high school that like brings up stories and they're like, "Oh, do you remember when like you did this?" And I'm like, "Ooh, I don't even remember." Like I'm like, "Ooh, that's not me. That is definitely not. I don't want to talk about that." Like
Yeah.
we're not going to ever talk about that ever
I
again.
don't know her.
Right, like I don't know her, but like some people get so stuck in that and they can't ever move forward. And so like that has caused me to end some friendships with people that I've known for a really long time. It's because I think that I moved forward and they did not, or maybe that's where they wanted to stay. And so just recognizing that we are ever evolving, like we are becoming new versions of ourselves every single day.
Yep.
Like every single day, something is different. And so, like,
Perfect.
it can happen without you even realizing it. Like
Yep.
you can literally blink and be like, oh, wow, this happened a year ago. Right. Or whatever. But just like that realization of like, okay, it's okay that I've changed. It's okay that I feel differently about this. It's okay that for the past 5 years, like I've like hated my body, right? And like all the things because like I was pregnant and had kids and then breastfeeding and man, that's all gross and weird. And I mean, it's great, right? Like I'm so glad that I got to do it, but like my
I
body went through
understand.
some stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, I think your body's beautiful, but like I know one is not my place to make that judgment or make that call. But
Yeah.
to your point, like, I mean, it went through a lot.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
went through a lot.
And just becoming comfortable with yourself. And I know this conversation is had all the time, right? Because social media and just the freaking
Mm,
Kardashians and right, like,
mm.
that's all we got to say right there is the Kardashians. But it is so easy to be hard on who you are as a person, where you're at in your life, where this person's life is at in comparison to yours, right? Like all these different things. But finding comfort in who you are and where you are is another part of that identity piece, right? You can have goals for yourself, you can have those places where you want to be, but also don't wait until that happens to love yourself and be comfortable with yourself.
Yes.
You gotta love yourself and be comfortable with yourself
Yes.
now in order to get to that point. And
1,000. There we go. There we go. I was like, is she going to bring it home? And there she went out of the park, baby. Yes. Yes.
yeah, and that was that moment at that concert. Like if I could put it all into words, it was like a, oh my God, Jenna, you have been daydreaming and right, thinking of all these things I want to do, thinking about how
You
much
felt
weight I want to
life.
lose, right? Like,
You felt
like all the,
life.
in that moment, nothing else mattered. Like nothing else mattered other than the fact that, again, I was alive and breathing. And
Exactly.
I did have beautiful kids at home and I had a beautiful husband, standing behind me, dancing with me, vibing with me. Like I have all these amazing people in my life. And like, for that moment, I literally just stopped thinking ahead and I started thinking about right now. And of course, I started thinking about like, oh my God, when am I going to get to do this again? Like, when's the next one? Like, let me Google it real fast. But it was such a pivotal, just life changing moment. And I hope that everybody that is listening to this today hopefully has that moment for themselves because it was pretty damn magical.
What a perfect note to end on. I love that. We hit all the high notes. God, this was a great episode.
Yeah.
If I do say so myself. Oh my goodness. As the host, I get to say that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But thank you, Jenna, for bringing your beautiful spirit energy to the pod and sharing that and being so eloquent with your metaphors. And the reason I call that out is for me, especially, like, I know I'm not the only one, getting your brain to calm down, shut it off, sharing how you got to this place, like this mindset, and being honest that sometimes it's a struggle and you still struggle with intrusive thoughts. Honestly, I don't think intrusive thoughts are ever going to leave us. I ask my therapist that all the time. I'm like, is this ever going to end?
Yeah.
She's like, it'll get manageable. I'm like, okay, that's a very nice way to say no.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And then my follow-up question is, does everybody think like this? She's like, no. And I'm like, should have asked that question. Great. Love to know what that's like. Good Lord. But it's like you woke up, and I don't want to say it like that dramatic, but it's like life reminded you what life is like, how to exist, and that is important. So yes, I encourage everyone listening, mothers to be, everyone listening, find that joy, find that spark, and it can be small, it can be giving yourself the time to go outside and embrace nature and let it just wrap around you as an energy. I don't know, like think about it. It is important. Beautiful conversation. Yes. And you know what? As you fill your cup, no matter whatever level it needs to be, you will find more joy in life. You will find more commitment to keep chasing that feeling. And I kept thinking about like, what was the Shazam moment, right? And it's life. Like, I think it just
Yeah.
comes down to life.
Yeah.
And I think we forget about that.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, we
Yeah.
forget how to live. We
I
forget
know.
that life is worth living and it's
Yeah.
worth taking even just for a moment.
Yeah.
I lose sight of that sometimes too.
Yeah. Well, I
Just
mean,
taking the 10 minutes. You know what I
but
mean?
like growing up though, like you always looked forward to what's next in life. Like what, like, okay, I can't wait until I turn 14, right? Because then I'm
Mhm.
more, then whatever, right? Then I get a cell phone. I can't wait till I turn 16 so I can drive. Can't wait to turn 18 so I can be 18 and say I can buy cigarettes and never buy cigarettes, right? I can't wait till I'm
Right.
21. And then, I've definitely already had my first drink before I was 21, but now I can do it legally. Like you have all of those like next and next and next. And at some point you got to stop looking at what's next. Absolute daydream goals all day long. I am not saying don't plan ahead or set goals for yourself, but also accept that those goals might change, that path might change. You can put your eyes on the prize, but more than likely it's not going to go that way to get there. I think there is a healthy way of looking ahead into the future, and I think that for some it can be very unhealthy. It can be like, okay, I'm going to wait until this, right? I'm not going to
Absolutely.
go do this until this happens.
I
I'm not,
struggle with that. I struggle with that. I've talked about that for sure.
it feels so
Guilty.
natural for us.
Oh, yeah.
And so like I think like you said, like I woke up and realized that I don't have to wait on what's next. Like I could die tomorrow, right? Not knocking on wood, all the things, right? But like I could die tomorrow and know that for this past year and a half and then beyond, right? Like I've been living for myself and I am happy with where I am. And I'm not going to be like, I wish that I would have gotten to this. It's more so just living in that moment, loving where you are, loving who you are, loving the way you look, putting the people in your life that you want in your life. Let's also like for that, right? Like you have no obligation to hang on to people that don't bring you energy or that
Oh,
drag you down.
amen. They no longer serve you. Exactly. Yes.
Yes. And so, like, it is your life at the end of the day, whether you have kids, whether you have a partner, whether you have family that you're really close with, at the end of your life, You're looking back on you and how you lived it. And so, like, you can still have all those people along for the ride, but just make sure that you're in the driver's seat and that you're doing those things for yourself. Yeah, I woke up.
I love that. I'm gonna cry. That just got goosebumps. Oh, that was beautiful. Well, Jenna, you're one of my favorite mamas, and I love those kids as if like they were my own little nieces and nephews. And even though I'm cousin Liz, I am Auntie Liz,
Yeah.
and I think you and Evan are fabulous parents. It's tough. So, cheers to finding yourself again and recognizing it doesn't matter how old you are. It's always important not to feel lost, to find that sense of life, and it's only going to better serve you in every cup that you have, whether it's your
Yep.
work cup, your wife cup, your mom cup, your friend cup, your you cup. It's worth having all the cups.
Yep.
So cheers to
Absolutely.
life. Cheers to life. Ugh, I love you so much. Thank you for coming on the pod. Let's get the rest of the fam now. Like you've broken, I was gonna say broken the cherry. I was like, is that appropriate? I'm not quite sure. But you've broken the egg. I don't know if that's a phrase, but we're gonna coin it. There we go. But I'm so glad you came on, and I really appreciate the conversation because I think it's important, and you are just a beautiful light, and thank you for sharing that light, because I like to think of the in between as one part humorous entertainment but also one part light, and thank you for bringing yours on to the pod and sharing that. So I don't know if you'd like to, but do you want to share your social media with everybody that's listening so they can keep up and follow?
You absolutely can because I have the cutest children ever. So that's some good content right there. And of course, my concerts. You'll get to see all of my concerts. My Instagram tag is Jenna_Lee_Cheney. And I'm sure Elizabeth will put that in there for you guys. But if you want to live vicariously through Jenna's wild concerts, sometimes EDM, yeah, I get a little crazy sometimes.
But feel
Experience it.
empowered, but
I
also
feel
feel
empowered.
empowered.
Yes. Please feel free to give me a follow.
I love it. And she'll be your new best friend. So there you go. Well, Jenna, thank you so much for joining me in the in between, and happy Mother's Day, my love.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Love you so much.
Man, it is great having family on the pod. Woo! I gotta do that again. Anywho, thank you all for listening to today's episode. This closes out the part 2 Mother's Day series. So you can check out Lisa's from last week if you haven't listened to it already. And for those who are new to the pod, welcome. If you would like to keep up with me and all the things, you can follow me at Elizabeth Cheney _ on Instagram. And if you want to keep up with the podcast, you can follow me at in.betweenpod, pod as in podcast. You can find me on YouTube for select episodes, especially as we get more into the video podcasting space. And then you can find me on TikTok at the In Between Podcast. I sincerely appreciate your support of the pod and listening to today's episode. And if you liked it, feel free to share with your mom, a fellow mom, a friend, anybody who you think might find value in today's content. And remember, you deserve to have a cup for yourself. And yeah, sometimes other parts of your life filter into that cup, but don't forget, you deserve your own individual cup. So thanks for listening. I hope you have a fabulous rest of your week, and I'll check you out next week with an all-new episode of The In-Between coming out next Wednesday. Special guest, Brittany Crabb, bringing her back on the pod. So good stuff to be heard and listened to, right? I think that makes sense. Anywho, you all have a great one. I will see you next Wednesday. I'm Elizabeth. Bye.